I'm trying out a paint along with the model from the previous video. My plan for this model is to hit it with white with a torn off piece of a makeup sponge. Then I'll put down the base coats and then refine after that. Looking back on the model, I think I could have pushed this white coat a bit further. We're just going to focus on the robes and the armor. They'll have the same color progression, which I think I'll fix in a different video. The materials read the same, which wasn't my plan. So I'll change up the green and redo the armor part to get a more saturated look. The robes are fine. I like how the robes came out. And it wasn't very difficult. We're going to do just a little bit of mixing. The colors I'm going to use are this Liquitex Naphthol Crimson and the Armor Painter War Paints Fur Brown. We'll also be mixing this with Vallejo Model Color Black, as this will be the shadow color on the green progression for our robes. I usually try to mix paints so I don't end up buying every paint in the world. And I would also say it's a useful skill to have in order to stay flexible. Paint mixing, that is. Also, for the economically minded, I just use a plastic cover, a wet paper towel, and wax-free parchment paper as my wet palette. I'm not too familiar with different kinds of parchment paper. Locally, I've only seen wax-free parchment paper alongside biodegradable parchment paper. And here our mix is coming along nicely. Unfortunately, it's not enough, and I'll have to come back later to mix some more. Right now it's sped up considerably because it's just a uninteresting base layer. Once over on all of the cloth. In a upcoming video, I'll be painting the weapons for this guy. As you can see, I've used the same red base coat for the robes on the shield, and we will see what kind of wood recipe I'll come up with in the next video. Previously, when I put this guy together, I had complained about his Hulk hand, and fortunately, the hand hiding behind the shield and being painted a dark color helps hide it from view. And maybe my sculpting job wasn't so terrible. This blue progression, this blue recipe on the armor, the base coat starts with the dark jade from Vince Ventrella's signature set with Pro Acryl, as well as Prussian blue hue Liquitex ink. I enjoy using inks, especially these deeply saturated inks, to mix along with paints to really leverage the flexibility from my limited paint selection. However, every month I buy just a little more paint, so it's a little less limited as time goes on. I didn't have a full recipe beforehand. I had a general idea of things I had seen on Instagram that I wanted to try to replicate. I like how the mixes came out, and I think I'll save them for other projects. There is no real reason why I had painted the axe and the skull red. As you can see, my wet palette is very small, and I was just trying to use up some of the red ink that I had left over. So I might not even keep this blotchy red base coat when I paint them later. dark yellow green from Vince Ventrella's signature set. Starts off the green recipe for the robes as well as the armor. So I'm just going to be layering the green on top of the red. The point of this process is to be easy. So we're just going to do progressive layers on top and then a wash over that to unify it. So this will have a sketchy feel, which I enjoy and might use for other projects. So just be mindful on keeping the red in the deepest shadows. I haven't even mentioned the model sources. The resin bits are from Daka's Knight of the Circle range, and everything else is from the old Putrid Blight Kings box. I had built those models previously. I used the leftover bits for this project.
It's like I never knew what lies ahead. It's like I never knew what is yet to come. It's like I never felt the pain in the arm. It's like forever has just happened now.
The War Boss Green and Bad Moon Yellow. This mix I had came on coincidentally trying to paint highlights for green skin, and it turned out to be a beautiful mix. I used this before on a 3D print of a giant plague demon. Right now we're just layering on the War Boss green on top of our dark yellow green. I might have thinned the War Boss green too much, as in some parts it becomes a little blotchy. And we're just gonna layer this on top, leaving some of the dark yellow green bits showing. We'll actually do 2 coats of War Boss green before we do the final coats of War Boss green and Bad Moon yellow. After the 2 coats of War Boss green, here is our yellow-green mix of War Boss green and Bad Moon yellow. This saturated green adds a lot of depth to the robes, especially next to our red shadows. This is a beautiful mix, and I am excited when I get the chance to use it. However, for the robes, this is a Plague Marine, and I will desaturate the robes later. With a smaller brush, I'm adding a second coat of yellow-green to the robes. And with this yellow-green, we're going to add some white from the under painting earlier to the yellow-green to try to make sketchy highlights and sell this as a fabric. With our highlight mix of yellow-green, we're going to sketch on some hatch marks onto the robes, and afterwards, with a wash of our first green, the dark yellow-green, the hatch marks underneath should sell the appearance of texture on the rough spun robes. With this hatch mark part, I'm just drawing straight lines downwards, leveraging the mechanics of my hand and a soft touch in order to make these straight lines. I don't want to cover everything, just make a believable texture. As time goes on, I let go of the restraint because I'm bad at that, and it still looks okay since the major point of this is to build some of that random clothy texture. we will now put the dark yellow green onto the armor, leaving behind some of the blue parts to try to sell this as a different material to the robes. I'm going for a kind of layman's non-metallic metal. It's something I've been experimenting with for a little bit to try to get the base foundation down as something believable to work on top of afterwards. This is where I'm mapping out where the light placement is for the highlights of the yellow green. I did not do a lot of planning on this, so this is me winging it. For the armor, because I wanted the saturation, I felt that a layer of War Boss green would be a waste of time. This is a mix of Vallejo model color flat yellow and Bad Moon yellow. The intention behind the mix was for a more controlled application of a saturated yellow color. I'm thinning out the dark yellow green in order to make a wash, and this will tie everything together and it will blend in the hatch marks we made to the rest of the robe. After applying the wash, it looked like some yellow had separated somewhere. So now I'm just cleaning the yellow out of the recesses with a clean, damp brush. I should have made the blue much thinner for this part, since it begins the endless glazing of non-metallic metal. And its opacity eventually is what leads me to put this down early. Now I'm just blurring the blue with the glaze of dark yellow green. Switching to the yellow mix, I should have cleaned my water cup at this time, as it altered the yellow mix noticeably. This is the first time I've done some kind of panel separation, and now that I've done it, I highly recommend it. I got some blue paint on the yellow highlights, but with fast hands and a clean wet brush, it comes right off. I keep applying it to my nail in order to wick off some paint for a more consistent and controllable application from the tip of the brush. We're coming upon the final result. Let me know what you think about it in the comments, and like and subscribe.